Hey folks, this is Skip Coryell on the Home Defense Show today. And I am here to talk about how big is big enough. This is not a sexual question, so don't worry about that. This has to do with caliber, right? But first, check out our sponsors, United States Concealed Carry Association at uscca.com, shootingclasses.com for all your self-defense needs, Center Shot Indoor Gun Range, which I can appreciate on a day like today where it's like 35 degrees out, and then Trinity Training and Security. All right, how big is big enough? This is one question that concealed carry instructors get a lot. They're talking about caliber. What is the smallest caliber I can carry that's effective in personal defense? Or is, how big is too big? Things like that. And I wish it were that simple. I wish it was binary like that. And people, they get confused. They say, just give me a number. Give me a number. Is it 9? Is it 40? Is it 45? What is it? But it's not that simple, primarily because every one of us is different. We have, different sized hands. We have different strength factors in our upper body. Some of us are sensitive to recoil. Others could care less about recoil. What are you going to use the gun for? Okay. Is it also going to be used in competition, or is it strictly a concealed carry gun? Are you expecting, to take on 3 guys or 1 guy, or, and the list goes on and on and on. Let me just tell you a couple of stories, all right, to give you an idea. And this is from like 25 years of training, concealed pistol license holders out on the range. Years back, I was on the range and I was helping out a little old lady. She was about 80 years old, and she was shooting a 22 semi-auto. And she's just driving out, and she's shooting away, pop, 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 just like that, right? And she had a nice, tight little group, which you'd expect. The guy next to us, this guy, and I kid you not, he was about 6.5 feet tall, bodybuilder type, young guy, massive chest and arms, and he's shooting a 45, and he's going, boom, boom, like that, and the little old lady is going pop, pop. But after a while, the big guy, every time the woman would shoot, he would start to laugh and snicker. And it was getting on my nerves. So I yelled ceasefire, and I turned to this big guy. I looked up at him, right? And I said, what are you laughing at? And he said, what is she going to do with that thing? Piss somebody off? And I said, well, I don't know. Hold on a second. So I said to the little old lady, I said, ma'am, can I see your gun? And so she handed it to me, and it was still loaded. And I turned to the big guy, and I said, I want you to hold your hand out in front of me like this. He said, why? I says, well, because I'm going to shoot you 5 times in the hand. And he said, what are you, crazy? And I said, what's the big deal? It's just a 22. Okay. Now that's an extreme example. And I know most instructors wouldn't say that, especially to a guy that's 6'6", but I'm not most instructors. And that just illustrates the point that nobody wants to get shot. No sane person wants to get shot with a 22 or a 45 or whatever. Now, granted, if someone is standing in front of me and they give me a choice, shoot me with a 22, but that's not what happens in real life. So in this woman's case, basically, let her try and shoot a 45, it would jump right out of her hand, right? And the big guy shooting the 45, he wasn't having any problems with recoil because he's in the prime of his life. He's super strong. So shooting a 45 for him was like her shooting a 22, because the gun probably jumped about the same amount for her as it did for him. That's just an illustration of how you have to tailor your gun choice, your caliber choice to you as a person and what your needs are, right? I'll give you another example. I like telling stories like this. I have so many stories from the range. A couple of years ago, I was over at Center Shot Indoor Gun Range, right? And I'm teaching, the tactical accuracy and precision advanced class. And there was a guy, he was probably 70 years old, okay? And he was shooting a 45 1911, beautiful gun. The triggers on 1911s, I just love them. They're great guns, okay? But at 10 feet, this guy's shooting a foot, sometimes 2 feet low, okay? And that's difficult to do, all right? But basically, he was just anticipating the recoil to a huge amount. He's driving out, and he had a misfire, and you can see his hand just, boom, just down like that. And he did this for like 2 hours. He's always shooting low. He could not stop shooting extremely low, grossly low. And and I kept suggesting to him, he's the customer, right? He's the customer. So I just kept suggesting, well, perhaps you should, go down in caliber so you can lessen the amount of recoil that you're feeling. And he would just look at me like I was nuts. And then finally, it's like we're almost to the end of the class, and he's still doing it. And I just told him, I said, listen, this is not going to get any better for you. I said, you're 70 years old, okay? You've been losing 1% of your muscle mass for the last 35, 40 years, okay? So this gun is not going to work for you as long as you're sensitive to recoil. And I gave him some ideas on how he can desensitize himself, but I just said, listen, you really need to go down to like a 9mm, something with less recoil. And he just looked me in the eye and he says, I've been shooting a 45 my whole life, and I'm going to die shooting a 45. And my first thought was, if you take that 45 into a gunfight, you probably will die. Because he couldn't hit the broadside of a barn if he was standing in it, right? And so you've got two extremes here, 22 versus 45. But the thing is, you're not limited to those extremes. It's not binary. You don't have to have huge recoil or no recoil. You can have something in between. And for most of us, that changes throughout the course of our lifetime. I'm 68 years old, okay? I'm a shadow of my former self, right? I've lost a lot of muscle mass. When I first started out, when I was in the Marine Corps in, 1975 to 1981, what did we shoot for a pistol? We shot 45s, okay? I hated them. Even at 20 years old in the prime of my life with good muscle mass, I didn't like 45, the recoil on those. I just didn't like them. And it was just a personal thing for me, right? And so when I get out of the Marines, I go in civilian life. They came out with a 40 caliber, so that they could have less recoil. And I started with that because people were telling me, hey, if the caliber doesn't start with a 4, it's not big enough, right? And so I bought into that. I shot that for a while. But then, okay, now I get up into my 50s and I'm shooting low because the recoil is more than I really want it to be, more than I'm comfortable with. And I switched to a 9. Okay, and for the past, I don't know, 13, 14 years, been shooting a 9mm. And I can handle a 9mm just fine, okay? But I still don't like the recoil, okay? So now at 68, now I'm shooting the 5.7mm, all right? And, people can argue about that all day long, oh, they can say, well, it doesn't have enough knockdown power. You go on YouTube, and I've watched dozens of like ballistic gelatin testing, different penetration testing, all of that, and I think that's probably not true. Okay, my wife, she shoots a 22 Magnum revolver. Her biggest concern is, hey, I'm out walking the dog, some guy stops and he wants to rape me, I'm going to shoot him. Okay, at close range with the 22, for her purposes, I think it's just fine. Okay, she's got 7 rounds to do the job. If 1 round doesn't get through the clothing, 2 or 3 will. Okay, but you have to tailor the caliber to what you want it to do and who you are as a person. That's what you have to do. For me, right now, hey, I went from 45 to 40 to 9 to 5.7. When I'm 80 years old, maybe I'll be shooting a 22 long rifle. I don't know. I really don't. But as you age, you have to adjust. Don't let your ego decide what caliber you carry. I think that's probably the biggest thing that I want to say today. Don't let peer pressure decide what caliber you carry. The big guy laughing at the little old lady, the guy should be slapped, okay? He just should, because, you shouldn't be a caliber snob. You just shouldn't. And if you're willing to trust your life to a 22 Magnum, then you go ahead and you do it. You get really good at headshots, okay? And with a 22 Magnum, you can get really good with headshots. You really can. You shoot someone in the face with a 22 Magnum, and they're gonna die. You shoot someone in the face with a 45, they're gonna die. The difference is the amount of mess you have to clean up afterwards. But for me personally, I'm a big advocate of you shoot the caliber that you can control the best. What are you most accurate with? For me, with the 5.7, man, I can stack those bullets. Okay, with a 9mm, 40 caliber, 45, I can't stack the bullets. I just can't. So, the wisdom of Clint Eastwood, comes to mind. A man's got to know his limitations. Okay, so just admit what your limitations are. What do I need? What's going to work for me? Am I sensitive to recoil or am I not? Those are all factors, things that you have to factor in. So that's my 2 cents on it. Some of you are going to poo-poo me. I don't care. You go ahead. You poo-poo me all you want to. But definitely remember our sponsors. Center Shot Indoor Gun Range, where it's always a perfect 70 degrees. United States Concealed Carry Association. Go to uscca.com. Trinity Training and Security. And then shootingclasses.com to find the right trainer for your needs. This is Skip Coryell on Home Defense Show. Don't be a caliber snob. God bless. Stay safe.